Welcome to another edition, the Motivational Sundays with Kevin and Friends. I'm Kevin McLemore. I am your show host, and I am joined with the cast of characters I call my co-hosts, Miss Jessica and Peter Chichester, the voice of our show, Otis Spencer, our conscience, Lanez Kinsey, and the perfect couple, and that's Christopher and his silent partner, Gilda. And then we have world traveler, Curtis Battles. We have our poet, as you know it, the saint, Harold McCoy, and accompanying him, spoken word educator, queen of queens, we have Miss Denise Lopes. All right. And believe it or not, I will tell you, and I said this earlier, you cannot turn on your streaming system, Netflix, whatever, without Naheem Garcia showing up. The last time I saw him last night, he was evicting someone from their apartment building on Netflix. Hey, welcome everyone. This show was created from one of the more than 300 motivational quotes I had created for the contents of my books. With over 40 years of studying human behavior, I was always curious on how one quote landed on one person. Were there words that just lay there on a page, or was it a conversation to be had? We meet every Sunday at 9 a.m. to discuss based on our interpretations and perspectives on a quote. This space is all designed not to make you comfortable, but to encourage you or to inspire you, maybe educate you, and create a framework that just makes you think. The key points to this show is all about kindness and compassion, love and joy, work relationship, personal pleasure, and the power of owning your story. So, with that said, I'm going to turn over the helm to our voice, Mr. Otis Spencer, and you will be delivering the quote. So, sit back, buckle up, and enjoy the ride.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Well, our quote this morning is coming back to where you started is not the same as never leaving. And for me, when you have the opportunity to get out there and travel, get to make new friends, meet new people, see new cultures, and see how they live, you get to respect them and understand what they go through. But being at home and looking at things on TV is not the same type of experience that you can get by traveling. But yet, even as Dorothy says, it's always nice to come back home because there is no place like home.
There's no place like home. And, like Dorothy says, all right, coming back to the hood. I mean, I do love going home. 30 minutes later, I can't wait to go back to my home, but I do love coming home. So I hope my family, if you hear this, I love you. I love you. But, there's a reason why I left Dayton, Ohio to be over here on the East Coast with all you wonderful people. So, coming back to where you started is not the same as you never leaving. Denise Lopes, how you doing? And how's that book of yours doing? She just had a release of her spoken word book, soon to be out for the summer. And she's doing great things over in the Boston area, educating and protecting our young people with the spoken word and with her heart on every single word. Denise Lopes, how do you interpret this quote?
Coming back where you started. For me, it's going back home to Cape Verde. I love going back, and I see the difference because when I lived there, I didn't see a lot of different stuff. So I'm going back with experience and as an adult. So I left when I was 14. Things were completely different. And when I go back, I see the people. Some people are stay the same place. They think in the same way. So they never left. So they didn't get the experience I've got. Like I travel and the experience of a new country, of different costumes and stuff. Uh, and it's just going back. Sometimes I just say when I'm with my family, I just observe them. I'm like, they still stuck in the same thing. And if they never leave, they're never going to get the experience that there's something better. There's other things out there for them to see. But I love going home. I love hearing the old stories, but now I go back with a different vision, like a different perspective in life because it's life has different ways when you get out and see different things. And for me, the culture here of the Cape Verdeans here and in Cape Verde is completely different because over here we losing our culture. And when I go back, it's just like my childhood all over again.
One of the most beautiful things, especially with you and Naheem being on this stage, when we talk about where we come from, we're all island people, no matter what color our skin is, no matter where we come from. If you trace back our DNA, we're all island people. We're all the same people. If you strip down, the whole DNA process and whatever, and this may come to a shock at some people, we're all black and brown. We're all on the inside, black and brown. We're connected. So the one beautiful thing about both you and Naheem and where you come from, you remind me of sitting on the beach and watching the scenery and being around people that just love to live, love to dance, love the music, have great conversation, without any of the chaos that we experience in our day-to-day life. So that's about life. And that's like, when you go home, that's what you're supposed to experience, the life that you bring back home. So with that said, Peter Chichester, over there, doing amazing things with that beautiful spa that both you and Jessica have. If for those of you that if you ever travel to the East Coast and get up into, I think it's the Connecticut area, is that right? Um, Peter, you can go ahead and put a shameless plug in for your spa. It's got some beautiful places, and Otis was laying back in that high pro massage table, which I need to talk to you about getting one for myself. But how does this quote land on you, Peter?
All right, Kevin, thank you. So the quote for me is I'm a very God-based person, right? So I kind of go with everything in my life. I reference the book, right? The Bible. And the Bible, to me, this quote brought me right back to the prodigal son. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with the story, but people watching the podcast, the simple story is father had two sons, and one son said, "Listen, Dad, I want my inheritance now. I want to go see the world. I want to go travel." So the father granted his wishes and gave him the inheritance, and he went off and saw the world and had the women and everything that this worldly world offers you, right? And squandered all his inheritance and came crawling back home, right? Ashamed and didn't want to face his father, and actually took a job on the farm as a handler feeding the pigs. And when the father saw him, the father, the son thought he was going to be, chastised for losing it all, but the father welcomed him with open arms, and that's where we should be, right? So even though you left, coming back home, it's not the same, right? And same goes for our time here on Earth, right? We left heaven, we came back here, right? But going back, it's all the same, right? The key of life, right, is the love, right? The key of life is the acceptance and the grace that we all need to share with one another. So for me, that's where the quote hit me, right? It's just a reminder always to have that with everybody moving forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just received the key of life from the healer, Peter. And so thank you for that. So as we smile here, a woman that's on our show that has very few words, but I know today, I sit back and get fired up. Let's see what Gilda has to say about this quote. But before Gilda, I give you some time to think. Otis, for our listeners that just tuned in, can you, with that silky smooth voice of yours, can you give us that quote again? And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this week Otis brought us this quote. So, Otis, the voice.
Coming back to where you started is not the same as never leaving.
All right, Gilda.
Hey everyone. For me, I feel that you should test the waters. In order to test the water, you got to get out there and see how it feels. Because when I do come back home, there's a lot of people, just like Denise said, that they've never been anywhere. They haven't experienced anything, only the same place where they're from. But for me, you got to get out there and test the water.
That was well said. Get out there and test the waters. Look at that.
Mhm.
Oh, give her a clap it up. Gilda, Gilda, Gilda. All right. Hey, Harold, my man. All right. Taking us back. You probably read a couple of good books there. And for those of you that are on the East Coast, you haven't had a chance to talk to Harold McCoy. Um, Man, it's smart. I get a lot of brilliant people in here, a lot of beautiful people in here, and there are people. I'm so glad that I'm surrounded by a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me. Harold McCoy, this quote, coming back to where you started, is not the same as never leaving. How's that?
Well, first, good day, everyone. It's good to see
Grand
you
Rising.
guys. I haven't been on the line for a minute, so it's just good to see you guys. You all look great. Um,
Right.
Initially, the quote itself didn't necessarily move me initially. I had to read it a few times to process it, to see how I might be able to philosophize. But you know, to keep it simple, basically, you know, I'm seeing this. I'm how I managed to break it down and for me to be able to see it and it affect me. And it's because this is the first time I've actually ever heard this quote. Um, it it's all right to start all over again. Just because you attempted something, and let's say it didn't go out the way you pictured it to go out, or even if it did, it's still all right to come back. It's not the same as not doing it. It's not the same as never attempting or never doing it. It's just it's all right to come back and start over again. It's all right to do it over again. Doesn't matter what age you're at. Doesn't matter where you're at in life. You attempted it. It went a different way. If it didn't go the way you expected it to go or way you wanted it to go, it's all right to start over again and reapproach it.
Yeah, and that's one of the most beautiful things about this show. When we talk about a quote, how it may connect to one person, it may just lay there be words on a page to another person. So there's no shame in the game. I know yesterday I sent out a quote because first I always write down the first thought that comes to my head, and I wrote two words: show up. You know, be about something and whatever. So it may not mean, anything to anyone else, but I do know every single day that I have a direct purpose of why I'm doing everything and so forth. So, don't feel bad because a quote may not hit you where you need to be at right now. But when you get to be where you want to be, sometimes a quote will follow you there and you go, oh, you know something? That's where, all right, I got that. Okay, that's where I'm at. So Jessica Chichester, the better half, Gloria Estefan is buying another basketball team or whatever. So if you guys haven't noticed, for those of you that are watching us on our YouTube page at RMK Productions and Network, Jessica and Peter, they have joined us today on their private plane. Look at the plush seats that they're sitting in, and they're traveling to some remote area and vacation. So, Jessica, all right, we're not going to divulge your location, but we're curious on how this quote lands on you.
We're actually on our way to go see Lois in Bali. That's where we are. That's where
Right.
we're. No, thank you. Good morning, everyone. And when I never actually heard this quote either, just like what Harold said. I never heard this quote either, and I didn't really even realize it was a quote until this morning. But I guess the way that it landed on me, so many fresh perspectives was, well, coming back to where you started, I have to read it again for myself, is not the same as never leaving. And it's all about just a change of perspective. And I think, coming back to where you started, we don't really have to even physically leave. I know we're talking about travel this morning, but we don't have to physically leave. Leaving is a metaphor. You can be in the same place, but still leave the old ways. And I think about even, my family, I'm first generation over here in this area that immigrated from Italy and came during the war. But, I guess when my family came over here, they had nothing, right? Nobody went to school. I'm first generation that went to college, but I just could feel this need to work hard and make it happen. And I guess that was passed down to me. So even though I always wanted to leave Stanford, I never wanted to live here. Just so happened that I ended up in the same place that I started, but with a fresh new perspective. Because in that, I was able to launch my own mental, personal, spiritual development. And then as a byproduct of that came new relationships, came the business, right? Came things that really pushed me out of my comfort zone, yet I still lived in the same place that I started. But what's interesting is even physically or metaphorically, we can think about it. Even if we just move one block over, right? It's a different perspective. So we can see newness in our everyday experience if we choose to. And when we circle back around, then it is we come back to where we always were, but it's not what it always was. So that's how that quote lands on me.
And I like the way you dress that up to, where we were versus where we are right now. That was a beautiful way to exit out of that quote there. So I'm going to tell you, it's amazing. I hope you don't hit any turbulence while you guys are flying, but I'm going to switch over to the other half. I won't say better half, because when you're paired up with someone that you were supposed to be paired up with, there's no better half. There's two halves that make a whole. So I'm going to the half that makes the whole, Christopher James. And again, this is Memorial Day. I know in a podcast we're not supposed to date ourselves or whatever, but this is an honor to memorize, to pay tribute to the people that are no longer with us, not only in spirit in this light, but to just kind of reflect from where you are right now to where you were, and to start focusing on where you want to be. Christopher, how's this quote land on you?
Initially, it was just me going back to my childhood neighborhood. And my first impression was, oh my goodness, this place is so small. It seemed a lot larger. Not just in size, but in vastness. It seemed like it was just the center of the world. And when I go back, I see it's maybe 3 blocks, 4 blocks. But that initial perspective has changed somewhat when I look back and try to dissect what made me think of my little hometown as being so small, and what perspectives changed besides height and size, but just the way I looked at things. And it was funny. 3 things all collided together. Place, Memorial Day, past friends, and the idea of what you have is in fact in itself an entire world. Now that's weird, and that's not something that we normally say. That's more of a France, Larnez sort of statement. But thinking back to growing up in Bakersfield, California, you see a lot of not so much vacant lots, but just unirrigated fields with one little desolate little tree is growing, and you think, oh my God, what a poor little place I live in. A few years ago, mid 70s, late 70s actually, I was in Italy, Jessica. I was in a little island, Sardinia, and we moved there as far as some forward deployed military whatever, but it was still very old country. And a friend of mine, an old bosun's mate, he and I had to inspect a bridge that was torn down every single year by the Italian military and then rebuilt. It was one of the little processes. Well, he'd done this twice before, and I wasn't really looking forward to it. So we headed out there, and on the way out, we came across this old desolate tree or hill with one little tree on it. And the tree was bent in a weird way because of the wind. And so he said, let's do something that will be a lot more fun than inspecting a bridge. We sat up against that tree with a bottle of wine, a flask of wine, a loaf of bread, and some salsa that he brought. And we sat there for about 2 hours, finished the flask, ate most of the bread and meat. And he said, okay, that's it. Inspection's done. Let's head back. I'm saying, we didn't do anything. He said, yes, we did. We took in an entire scene and it'll be permanently embedded in our memories. And I'm thinking, okay, that's one way of looking at it, but I see it as, we just goofed off for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. But that whole image made me think back about that old dirt lot in Bakersfield with the one little lonely tree. It was replaced by that tree in Italy. And of course, my friend that was passed gave me a memory that made everything that I thought was the world growing up in Bakersfield seem a lot smaller, because now I'd seen something that was really amazing. And more importantly, I experienced something that was really amazing, that I could relate to that one little desolate tree in Bakersfield, California.
And seeing this is where these quotes fall within the world based on our relationships and personal pleasures. That's just one of the key points. It does make you think. It does make you think. And I'm curious to see what CB is going to come up with when this quote lands on him. Otis, one more time. Give us the quote.
Coming back to where you started is not the same as never leaving.
All right, Curtis.
Good morning, family. So I'm going to share a story that has just happened in the last week. So my mom, who was 90 going on 91, passed last fall around Labor Day. So my sister and I finally got ourselves together and we did a memorial service this past Saturday, not yesterday, but the week before. And so as part of this, we came across a trove of pictures that goes back and really charts what her life was, literally back to her birth announcement, when she was pictures in college, when she met my dad, all the different places she traveled around the world, to the Far East and to Europe and things of that nature. There were pieces I came across that I didn't even know about. And so it not only was a chance for us to honor her, but I ended up putting together a little slideshow that gave a sense of it. And we had ended with a 90th birthday party just before she had, when she was still able to move around and all. And she said, "This is the best day of my life." So when I think about this quote, it's this coming back. I got a chance to see through a different person's eyes, sort of how my life has expanded and grown, and has given me all the opportunities to do what a number of folks has talked about: travel to different places, engage with new people, find a different world and a different path, and see what it's like to have a trailblazer that has gone before you and done things that you never thought that you might do. And what I always tell to the young folks that I encounter, as a mentor or somebody I'm working with, and a client, or having a cold beer with, which is always one of the important things to do in life, is it's not where you start, but where you finish. So this idea of, we started someplace, I've come full circle back to some of the roots I started with, but I'm a very different person with a very different perspective. And I try to pass that along to people. So, it is been a very meaningful, this lands on me in a way that was very meaningful personally. So that is my story for today.
And he is sticking to it. It's not where you are. There you go, CP. And thank you for that. And one day we're probably going to be experiencing a cold beer on this show, because we are doing a whole tour. And Curtis has an interview on our other podcast, Talking with Kevin and Son, when we're talking about his app, BAT, where he's connecting all the breweries. I'm still having trouble pronouncing that word. But, for those people that indulge in craft beer, it will connect all the dots, and mainly will connect the dots to our Black popular entrepreneurs that have started this. And so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to the top of the screen over here to Ms. Larnez Kinsey to see how this quote lands on her. And I'm going to say, I'm going to apologize, Naheem, early, because I'm going to tell you, for those of you guys that are listening, often we show up when we get this quote, we toss it out every Wednesday and give everyone a chance to think. And then soon as two people open their mouth based on their interpretation, you go, I'm not saying that. Oh, it makes me feel a totally different way. But I'm going to tell you, if anyone is going to be a shift shaper in this conversation, it's going to be our next co-host, Ms. Larnez Kinsey.
Well, thank you for that, Grand Rising, everyone. I missed you guys last week. Happy Memorial Day. This quote. So it's my first time hearing this quote. So this is how it landed on me. We wake up in 2024, right? Every day, but there's a twist. Every engagement, every exchange of energy is like a trip through a time machine. This cosmic journey called life, sometimes we find ourselves revisiting moments thought we were past already. Maybe it's a familiar place, maybe it's an old dream, or maybe it's just a feeling that we went through in the past and we thought we left it behind. But here's the cosmic truth. Each time we come back to where we started, we're not just retracing our steps. We're weaving in and out of timelines, jumping through dimensions and rewriting a script of our existence. And that, my friend, changes everything. When we find ourselves revisiting our old haunts, it's like flipping through pages of a multi-dimensional book. Think it was Dick Gregory is the one who I heard say this. Envision the path you wish to walk and witness it materialize. And he wasn't kidding. It's about tapping into the power of our imagination and steering our cosmic ship towards our desires, the desire of the future. The journey isn't just about bouncing around through time and space. It's about slowly gaining wisdom, connecting with the Most High, and aligning ourselves with the divine flow of the universe. Each exchange of energy, each cosmic connection propels us further along the journey towards enlightenment and the ultimate connection with the Most High. So that being said, my beautiful souls on this podcast that are listening, embrace those moments of coming full circle, because it's not about going backwards. They're not about time traveling in the past, but propelling forward in the future with purpose and intent and a deep connection to the Most High. So strap in, embrace the adventure, and create a future that's guided by divine wisdom and love. And that's how this hit me.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a mic drop.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.
Like I said, the hardest part about this show is that when you surround yourself by so many highly passionate and intelligent people, it is hard to follow. This is like, I've said this before, knowing that you have a hit record and that's the only one, and you go to one of the biggest stadiums in the world, there's 40, 50,000 people up there, and then your agent tells you you're going to perform. But before you get to the stage, if you warmed up, you got your group together, they said, give me 1 second. We have someone special in the audience. And all of a sudden, Billy Joel was sitting out there. And Billy Joel comes up and plays. And they said, get ready, Kevin, you're gonna be up next. And then all of a sudden they said, Kevin, you gotta wait for a little bit. We have someone else coming up there. And all of a sudden go to old school, the Temptations come there and they do 3 songs. And then the Temptations come up there, and before you know it, there's another guy comes in there, he wants to play the guitar, and it's Prince, the late Prince comes up there and plays. And they said, Kevin, okay, you're gonna follow Prince. He plays about 7 songs, he does a whole concert. And then all of a sudden you come out on stage and you go, oh my gosh, hold the horses. The announcer comes out and he goes, we have the king of pop sitting in the audience. And all of a sudden, a little skinny black guy comes in. Someone throws him a red jacket. He slides across the stage. He grabs himself, whatever, and Michael Jackson performs. And then he said, and by the way, Here comes Kevin McLemore, and everyone is sitting there listening. So, if I have set up this image in mind, this is the way that I'm going to feel after following all you guys, because I'm going to tell you one of our most famous people on this show. You cannot turn on your television or look back on a movie and not find Naheem popping up someplace in there. He has been sharing the screens with, Paul Giamatti and The Holdover. He has shared the screen with Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep, and a bunch of other people. I mean, he sent me his resume, and the list of things that he's done was like reading a whole nother book. And I'm going, how am I going to do a podcast and do this man's bio and then still have time to do the show? But he is my beloved brother, one of those kindest, gentlest people in here. When I talk about with this show of my cup being half empty or half full, when I'm surrounded by these people, my cup is running over. I don't know how you feel today, but I welcome, I sit back and I applaud. And as fearful as I am, and I face my fears to follow Naheem Garcia, when he comes back and he talks about coming back to where you started is not the same as never leaving. Naheem, go ahead and show those people what you got.
I don't got much after listening to Larnez and the rest of y'all. But in listening, I did think about my grandfather when he lived in the Bronx, and he never left the block, never left the Bronx, and never left the neighborhood he lived in. Everything he needed was in the same neighborhood, and he never grew with that. So my grandmother made sure that I got to see a lot of the world. So coming up as a kid, I got to leave the country. I got to go to South America, Guatemala. I mean, I actually drove from Dorchester. Those of you from Boston know I drove from Dorchester. Our family drove from Dorchester all the way to Guatemala. That experience alone, when I came back home, I was empowered. As a young 5%, I used to say, when in doubt, go to Mecca. So we would go to New York, go to the rallies, go to Parliament, and come back refreshed, rebuilt, ready to go. And the one thing about traveling, just like elephants, no matter where they start, they end their journey coming back home. And when you come back home empowered and ready for the next level of your life, share that with somebody. Because some people, it's like when I took these children to Pittsburgh and New York for competition, some of them have never even been on a plane. Some of them ain't never been on a plane. And then when you take them to another state and they see how other people are living and you put them in a nice hotel, some of them never slept in their own beds. And they sleeping in a nice hotel. They eating good food. They being treated as stars. And you see this growth of these babies, just going from babies to young adults. And you see their mind expanding. You see how they feel about themselves. You see how they empower. Now they come back home, they're a new person. They can contribute more to the community they live in, to the cipher they're living in, with the people they're with. So this quote landed on me the same way it landed on everybody else. Growth is important. But it's always important, just like I tell these young people when they come here to college and they do these films and they study film and then they leave. You got to bring it back home because that's the only way we can empower the entire community. Your knowledge is not just for you. It is your duty to share your knowledge with the world. Peace.
I am going to tell you, I should have went first. That's all I'm going to say.
Good. I'm glad I left you a nice mountain because I'm still climbing the one Larnez left me.
You know something? Normally, I look at a mountain and call it a hill. I am going to tell you this is a freaking glacier following you today, because what you said. I'm going to do a shift because between all you guys' conversation and what I was going to say, I was going to say simple. No matter what you do in life, is that matters, but do something that matters to make a difference. I was going to keep it very simple. But when you brought that up about going home, I made light of my neighborhood. When I was growing up, I lived down the street from, Thomas and William Shelby of Lakeside. Shelby wrote second. The songs for the Whispers. Across the alley was Ohio Players, around the corner was Roger Troutman. So the funk in Dayton, Ohio, within 8 to 10 blocks. And these guys were the kids I grew up. I grew up in a neighborhood. If anyone has ever seen Cooley High, that was my neighborhood. But when I talk about going home, it breaks my heart because the house is 710 Shute Avenue in Dayton, Ohio. It's in squalor. The house that we dreamed about that had been remodeled by Kirk Logan, that was one of our DJs on WDAO, is now housed by the local drug dealers and the traffic that comes into that area. It is not the same neighborhood. I did not know. I always knew I grew up in the hood, and didn't know I was poor until I had a rich roommate. College sports allowed me to travel, to see the other world, to see the rest of the world. When I went from a yellow school bus to a plane to go to a competitor's meet, and then saw how other people lived and they think, and then a conversation, I began to be involved in human behavior, and not only human behavior, but my behavior. So coming back to the neighborhood, at first, I wasn't accepted. You know, I was told by people that loved me, that I grew up with, that I didn't talk different, that I was different. I was picked and teased because I was a college boy. And I kept, even when making this show, I said the reason why I wrote Indispensable Games of X's and O's is I wanted to make sure that someone that experienced life the way that I did knew that they had an out. So one of my favorite books is by Dr. Seuss, All the Places You Would Go. But when you are stuck where you're at right now and you don't see where you can want to be, you see things in black and white because you're limited by the options in your own mind. But when you get a chance to surround yourself about people that have been places, that have gone places, you know, when I talked to Denise and Naheem about, you know, going home to the islands or whatever, I long for adventure. When I sit there and I'm stimulated with conversation with Larnez, Curtis, Harold, you know, I long for a different type of freedom to go someplace else. When I talk about wanting to serve my country, and especially serve the country that has not served me well, that I served because it was my duty to do so, you know, I connect with my brother over here, Mr. Christopher James. When I talk about love and compassion and talk about longing for a relationship that has no line of saying what's mine and what's yours and what's ours and we're one, I look at Jessica and Peter. I look at Christopher and Gilda. And I said, I know what love looks like when I see the two of those people. When I want to laugh and I want an adventure and I want a little power in my voice, I listen to Otis Spencer, someone that every single time, if you haven't noticed, when you look at him and he delivers a quote, you know, that man, you see all 32 teeth, and all I can say is smile while you still have them. And then when you want someone to pound on the table and to pound on the facts, and you got 10, 20 minutes to spare on a 2-minute conversation, I turn to my sister that takes me out when we go out in public. And I'm an introverted person. Larnez protects me like, you know, she was Mike Tyson's bodyguard. And I'm going to say, hey, to get to me, if you got past Larnez, you're either someone very good or Larnez just gave up, because I'm going to tell you, she is the protector for all of us. And so when I say how this quote lands on me is basically, you know, coming back to where you started is not the same as never leaving. And when you leave a space, you need to leave a space in a better position than you started. So this is how this quote lands on me. It's not being stuck, it's getting unstuck. This quote allows you to see what's possible, where it was used to be, it was impossible. It allows you to thrive in a space that would handcuff you and shackle you to a space, and you freed yourself from it. So I'm hoping that the conversation we had, not only have we entertained you, we have educated you, we have also set up a platform for you to say, go out and get a piece of what's mine. Instead of looking at your cup half empty and talking about what you don't have, surround yourself with people that are pouring into you and allow your cup to run over. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and while I'm building a plane while flying, I'm going to land it for a little bit and let you sit on this in this Memorial holiday. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you've heard and you want to share it, I'm going to say this show, you should share it. We got deep on here. Go to RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. If you'd like to be a part of this, go ahead and subscribe. We have the link, and we would love for you to come in and be positive. This is probably the only podcast out there that you could just join the show. Get up this Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come in and be with Naheem, Harold, Denise, Curtis, Jessica, Peter, Otis, Larnez, Christopher, and Gilda, and myself, and just have a good time. My grandfather always said, when you get to a place in life that you can help someone else, it is your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said,
Fade to black.
We fade to black. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your day, every day. Live life.